All right, so I want to quickly talk to you guys about gaining muscle while you're cutting. So this is a really common question I get asked. People ask me, can I gain muscle while I'm cutting? How much muscle can I gain while I'm cutting? And this is actually very simple and straightforward. So I'm going to keep this video very short and to the point. So ultimately, there are two factors that are going to dictate your success when it comes to putting on muscle while you're cutting. You have to first look at how much body fat do you have, how much excess fat do you have, and how many years of training do you have under your belt. So these are the two sliding scales that you have to pay attention to when it comes to your ability to recomposition, to put on muscle while you're cutting. So the leaner you are, the more years of lifting you have under your belt, the harder it's going to be to recomposition. It's not impossible, but it's excruciatingly slow, and you shouldn't even really bother. You shouldn't even bother with the thought of recomposition. You should just focus on, the traditional bulking and cutting cycles. However, if you're someone who has a lot of excess fat, a lot of excess body fat, a lot of excess energy built up in the way of fat stores, and you don't have many years of lifting under your belt, you will be able to recomposition quite rapidly. So these are the two things that you have to actually pay attention to. And for example, me at my current level, I'm pretty advanced and I'm relatively lean. I'm probably around 12-13% body fat. If I was to try and cut to 8 to 9% body fat, I'm on a cut right now. If I'm trying to get to 8 to 9% body fat, it's very unlikely that I'm going to add any significant muscle mass. Maybe I'll be able to add a little bit of strength to my squat or my deadlift, lower body lift, but I'm not expecting to put on significant muscle mass along with it. So those are the two things you have to keep in mind. And the reality is that, if you have a lot of excess fat on you, you have an excess energy built up in the way of fat stores. So you'll be able to take that energy and put it into your muscle building, strength building process. So, novice lifters can actually put on a lot of muscle in a calorie deficit. So it's not optimal. You're not going to be able to make the most of your gains in that way. But if you're someone who's overweight and you want to cut and you want to put on muscle mass at the same time, you will absolutely have success with that. And as I said, if you're not in the position of someone who's a beginner lifter and, has a lot of excess fat, you can recomposition, but it's so slow that it's not even really worth considering. You'd be better off just focusing on doing traditional bulks and cuts. That's going to be a much more efficient route to putting on muscle, putting on strength. You shouldn't really ever be focusing on recomposition. However, there are a couple things you have to keep in mind, even if you're someone who's in the optimal position to be able to put on muscle while they're cutting. There are a couple things and a couple more sliding scales you have to keep in mind, and it's that first, you don't want to put yourself in that steep of a calorie deficit. So you want to keep your calorie deficit small to moderate. So even if you're in the optimal condition to pack on muscle while you're cutting, if you're eating in a super steep calorie deficit, you're probably not going to have any success with it. If you're aggressively cutting, probably not going to gain muscle. You need to keep the calorie deficit small to moderate, because a calorie deficit is an energy deficit. So putting yourself in a steep calorie deficit, there's no way in hell you're gonna be able to put on muscle along with the fat loss process. So you have to focus on just eating in a small to moderate calorie deficit. 300 to 500 calories below maintenance is perfect. And you have to also keep in mind that, measuring the success of a recomposition is not as simple as just looking at the scale. Because if you're actually doing a recomposition properly, then you have to really take into consideration your measurements. You have to look at, okay, how's my waist looking? How are my lifts going up in the gym? You got to measure your arms, your chest, your thighs, your waist, because the weight should stay the same. Because if you're actually losing fat and putting on muscle at the same time, the scale weight should remain around the same. So you have to judge your success based on how your lifts are improving in the gym, how you look in the mirror, how the body composition is improving. If your weight is staying around the same, but you're starting to see more ab definition, you're seeing your strength go up in the gym, that's a very, very good sign that you are, recompositioning, that you're putting on muscle while you're cutting. So that's a great sign of success. Another thing you want to keep in mind is that you have to avoid excessive cardio. So as I said, a calorie deficit is an energy deficit. If you're trying to, put on muscle while you're cutting, while you're in a calorie deficit, and also try and do these excessive runs and this intense cardio hit training, then you're gonna have zero success. So you have to keep the cardio to a minimum. I would say get 10,000 steps per day. Walking is fantastic for fat loss and muscle building because it has very little effect on first of all, your appetite and your recovery. So your recovery ability is already limited as a natural lifter. So putting it towards all these different things is not going to be conducive to gaining muscle and strength. You have to put all that energy towards your strength gains in the gym, and that has to be your primary goal. So while you're eating in a small to moderate calorie deficit, you're ensuring that obviously you're getting enough protein, 0.82 grams per pound of body weight. You have to prioritize gaining strength in the gym. So if your scale weight's remaining the same, your measurements are improving, your waist is going down, your physique's improving in the mirror, and you're seeing your strength go up in the gym, It's a great sign of recomposition. That's a sign that you're gaining muscle while you're losing fat, and that's a great sign of your success. So that's all it comes down to, guys. It's truly that simple. You know, if you're someone who's not in the optimal position to be recompositioning, to be focusing on gaining muscle while they're cutting, I would strongly recommend you just focus on, you know, maintaining your muscle, maintaining your strength when you're cutting, instead of focusing on trying to recomposition. You're gonna have a much easier time, more efficient time just focusing on traditional bulks and cuts. If you're someone who is in the position where you don't have many years of lifting under your belt and you have excess fat to use as energy, then 100% you can recomposition, but you have to apply the steps that I talked about. Focus on gaining strength in the gym, you know, focus on not too much cardio, just get your steps in, focus on a small to moderate calorie deficit, and focus more on the measurements and how your physique's improving, how your strength's improving, instead of looking at the scale. And that's how you gain muscle while you're cutting. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Make sure to pick up my free 13-point natural muscle building checklist. It has everything you need to know about building muscle as a natural. If there's a free training program in there you can follow while you're going through this process of a recomposition, and we'll talk soon.